Welcome to the first episode of Life-Size Voices. My name is Omar Faruqi, and I am the founder of Life-Size Publishing. We started Life-Size Voices because we wanted to uncover the insights and the mission of today's most inspiring authors published by Life-Size. Today, we have a very, very special guest with us. He is a former Olympian, two ex-Grey Cup champion, eight-time Hall of Famer, business coach, public speaker, and author of Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable, Bob Molle. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Bob and I have been working with each other now for almost a year, and I I mean this year has been so much of a learning curve for me. I've learned so much from him. He has a beautiful heart, and my team and I just love working and learning from him because it gives us the motivation to actually strive for greatness and build our own uh, philosophies, followed by get comfortable being uncomfortable. But Bob, the format we're following for Life Size Voices is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to hit you with three questions, and the objective here is to get our viewers and readers, because this is also going to be turned into a newsletter, to actually learn more about the book, learn more about your journey, and more importantly, learn from an individual who has gone through life's toughest challenges. Is that good with you, Bob?
All good. Hit me.
Perfect. Perfect. Bob, the first question, we call it the spark. What inspired you to write this book? And was there a defining moment or personal experience that lit that fuse?
No, well, loaded question and great question. Loaded question because what inspired me, I was already a public speaker and I got a call from, well, that'd be quite a few years ago. Guessing 25, maybe longer. And Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he was coming up to Canada. He was doing a 2 day conference. And when he was in the 2 day conference in Edmonton, they phoned me up and heard about me, and they said, "Hey, can you start out You're the energy guy we heard, and we heard good things about you. Would you mind starting up our 2 day conference and be the opener?" And we talked about it and did a deal. And the night before we get it in there, and wine and cheese, you meet all the other speakers who are going to be on for the next 2 days. And a funny story because obviously you meet all the speakers and everything. I'm the first person up in the morning, so I'm on live and that. I'm the opener, and I get out there and thing goes, and the thing's a packed house. They fill the auditorium right to the rafters. And as I walk off stage, and I do the first hour, I walk off stage, and one of the guys that I had met the night before, one of the speakers, walks up to me, and he kind of casually just walked up and he shook my hand. "Bob, loved your speech." And then he hesitated. And he goes, "Too bad you're a dumbass." I go, "Excuse me?" I didn't know how to take him. I did like, is he sarcastic? Is he like, "I like your speech. You're a dumbass. Like I'm dumb, or what are you doing?" And he goes, I said, "Excuse me?" And I didn't know how to take him. And because when you walk off stage like that, and he goes, "Hey, just so you know, you walked off the back of the stage. There was 200 to 300 people after your speech went to the back of the room to buy your book, and you didn't have a book. You're a dumbass." And that's exactly what he said to me. That's how the book, like, do I need to write a book? No, I don't need to write a book, and too much work or whatever. You know what I mean? And that's what started it. And the exact words I said to him, I said, I turned to him and I said, what would I write about? Like, I'm not a writer, and I find it painful, to tell you the truth. And he goes, "You just told three great stories," and he says, "I have a feeling you have a few more." That's exactly. And he said, "Put 10 stories together and you'll have a book." That's how it started. And some guy just calling me out. There's an old saying from an Eastern philosophy: no evolution without shock. And I got the shock right there, and I go, "Hey, why don't you just do it?" Right? Like, kind of thing. Like, you do have the stories, and just put it together. And that was the kind of got the ball rolling for. And a couple of people commented, through the 2 day thing about stories, and I tell how I'm a storyteller. So that's what how the book really started. And at the time, I'd already started using this quote, get comfortable being uncomfortable. So it's a loaded question because I had a mentor. I unfortunately lost him probably 20 years ago. And I took a course from him and went visit him for a day every month for a year. And he studied in Eastern philosophy, been there for through thousands of years. And I wanted to learn the philosophy of what people understood and studied from thousands. It came from more a Taoist belief system. And I was quite intrigued at it at the time. Met with him for a day every month for a year and learned everything about him. And he had studied it. And him and I had a great relationship. And so we'd go out for coffee after like a month later. Bob, how you doing? Let's go for coffee. Let's discuss this and that. And when he'd come up to me and talk to me about he'd give me different phrases all the time. In fact, I got a big book of all the phrases that he used to bring and convert it to English for me. And one of the coffees, I was sitting down with him. I said, if you could, all the learnings that you gave me, I said, if you could describe it in one line, what would it be? And he paused. He said, Bob, that's a great question. What it means if you're going to become all what you can be. And he threw me this line and he goes, this in English means get comfortable being uncomfortable. So it came from nothing I invented. It had been there thousands of years ago. No one ever developed. So he converted it to English for me and said, get comfortable being uncomfortable. I said, wow. And then the book and everything just kind of came together after one of the coffees, right? And that's what it started. Get comfortable. I said, love that. I said, it just, Bob, you won't grow to your potential unless you become uncomfortable all the time. And
Wow.
that's what started it. The Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable movement. Now we own the domains to it. My wife told me that. It wasn't my idea. We bought that. Well, you know this. Uh, Obviously, domains, everything. And I bought those probably over 15 years ago, and the trademark and everything else, right? And
You have
so,
the trademark, you have a community of now it's over 30, 40,000 people across all social media platforms. You have a newsletter community of over 10,000 people. So, I mean, people are loving the philosophy. And I think, I mean, there's a lot of things that I've learned from the book, but my favorite part of the book is this story you share about one of your coaches. And it goes like, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. And it was a story about how you had just come back from the Olympics. You won silver medal at the age of 21, and for the lack of a better word, you just became cocky. And you walked into another school. You would have already assumed that you were going to beat the person they had put forward, and you actually ended up losing. And your coach came up to you, and he's like, "Bob, listen. When you lose, don't lose the lesson." And for me, as an individual, as just as an entrepreneur, actually, there have been so many times where I've lost some of my highest performers, where I've lost individuals who I was working with, and more importantly, where I've lost on so many opportunities. But I think when you look at that from a macro perspective, there's so much you can learn from all those losses. And I think that's what GCB was really about. But Bob, next question, we call this the takeaway. What's the one key idea or lesson you hope readers take from your book?
I think it's all wrapped up in the title. You always think, I remember stories and coming out of some of the speaking engagements and the stories how people could remember 15, 20 years ago the story I told them. And I found that if I could impact some people, and that's why I love the line, get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's just like people hesitated. Oh, I should have done this. I should have. I never wanted people to live with regret. So that was the name, really, the essence of the book, to push people forward. They could learn from other people. And now we got our own community is really the line, kind of like I got so many of them, but the line, from the title is that. But the other line I used to use with it, I said, you snooze, you lose. I said, so if you don't try it, you're never going to learn. Like, how are you going to, well, what happens if I fail? Failing's part of the process. Fall back, get back up on your feet, right? It's like, and I guess I didn't really have a big fear of failure. I thought it was part of the process, which is kind of a cool thing too.
But Bob, I think because you have a background in sports and because you've been a high performing athlete, do you think that has a lot to do with the philosophy and the way your life is structured right now? Like, for example, I never pursued sports on a professional level. And for me, I had to learn these things from either people like you or I've had to hire my own coach. But I feel like it's kind of natural for you. It's one of your innate abilities to just get comfortable being uncomfortable and live with discomfort in any scenario and in any situation. So, do you think that it's derived from sports?
For sure. I don't think you could ever put it in, you know, what's it like to experience uh, once the pressure gets in, like I've experienced so many things, like nothing surprises me anymore, I guess. You know what I mean? Like when you're 21 years old, you're still a pup, right? And to experience an Olympic final, I remember a guy coming up to the media and it sold out. Everybody screaming for USA. I'm in, enemy grounds and sold out 15,000 people for the super heavyweight final. And then I remember a guy walking up to me before, and he goes, "Yeah, did you hear the viewing audience is over 575 million people watching you? You
Wow.
don't understand the impact, you know what I mean?" And then you need to kind of grab that at 21. You go, well, it can't be any more pressure than I've had, from great ups or this or that. And, probably one of, even going to the Soviet Union back there, you had armed guards around you all the time. You didn't know if you were going to get shot. You didn't know. And I traveled by myself because I was a college student at the time, right?
Yep.
And it was uncomfortable. Oh man, they experienced that. The Pan American Games where I was brought in like armed guard because I was wrestling Venezuela and a big steroided guy, and they're hanging off the rafters there because they're kind of king as their super heavyweight wrestler. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's that everybody looks for the big match, right? The big final of heavyweights, right?
Yep.
And I had pinned their guy in like a minute, like pretty easy match because the big steroid guy wasn't that good a wrestler, and I pinned him, and all of a sudden I got people booing, whistling me, you know what I mean? And now I got guards around me, and I have to get escorted off the stadium, sold out, and to experience that kind of stuff, you just go, it can't be anything worse than that. It's
Yeah.
all your perspective, right? And you just like I've seen so much stuff, and life's all about experiences. Then you go, oh, that wasn't that bad. No, that wasn't that bad. You just keep nibbling, right? You just, oh, let's try this, let's try that.
Yeah. That's amazing, Bob. And our last question, we call it the mission. What is the mission with your book? What is your overarching mission? And how do you see Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable changing the world?
Great question. I think the biggest thing I always wanted to do, and that's my personal, create an impact. Really, if you could put it in a couple of words, create an impact. And if the phrase goes and it's already going viral, like I just flipped you another thing, an NFL coach, and he just got hired, and he turns around to the whole audience in Chicago, his team, and gives them I just want to make sure everybody, here's our philosophy: get comfortable being uncomfortable. Now it's inbred where people's at. And it's such a cool thing now where the phrase starts getting used all the time now. And when someone, oh, I'm not comfortable with that. And then they just turn around naturally, it becomes embedded in our culture. And if we can do that universally, internationally, and help people through those tough times, I said, we've created more people, more experiences, more everything. You know what I mean? And creating impact is a great thing. I think you sit back and in my deathbed and go, okay, how did you leave this earth? Did you leave it better? You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that is really important. And I feel like creating impact is the most valuable thing you can do for this earth, especially for the youth. We've got so many different influencers who are promoting easy ways to make money, who are promoting passive income, and who are promoting things that aren't really helpful in building a foundation for your career and obviously more importantly your relationships. I know that's something you talk about quite a bit, but actually it leads me to just one more question, Bob, and we're going to call this a bonus question. But I don't want the answer to be get comfortable being uncomfortable, but what do you think is the one life philosophy you would want people to get, not just off of your book, but just off of all of the content you put out there? Because I know you really, really do talk about and push out building effective relationships with the people around you.
Yeah, well, I think the philosophy actually got taught by the same guy again, my mentor, who unfortunately lost him. where he turned around to me and the happiness part of it, a lot of people miss because I see so much mental health. So it's such a great question. And I've been asked the question, why are you so happy? And I think I do one thing maybe a little bit different than most people. Well, quite a few, my wife would say, but I really, really enjoy the relationships. And then when I found that happiness article, the longest article study on happiness out of Harvard, and it was like 80 some years old, and the simplest form, the happiest people have good relationships. And I always go back to the quote from an Eastern philosophy where they use the word relations. I didn't really understand it at the time, and really the quote came back to relations was the ability to make new relationships and make existing ones better. And if we can do that, we got a world that's not fighting all the time.
Yep.
We create a better Earth, right? And what did you leave when you left Earth? You know what I mean? Did you create an impact? Did you create better relationships to that? And people, I think, are too much on the social media and stuff like that, and they don't develop relationships, right?
100%. And just for our viewers to understand how important building relationships is, Bob and I actually met off of LinkedIn. And I had sent Bob a cold message, had no idea who he was, had no mutuals. He thankfully agreed to get on a call with me, very similar to the one we're having right now. And off of that one call, we've been able to do business with each other on many, many different fronts for over 8 months now. Bob and I visited Winnipeg, launched his book over there, and it's been a roller coaster. But for all our viewers and readers, the book isn't, although the title says "Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable," it's not a hardcore David Goggins style book. These are excerpts and stories from Bob's life and stories from his family, stories from one of his very, very important aunts called Aunt Dicky, um, and lots of lessons that he's learned throughout his almost 63 years on this earth. So I would urge all our readers and viewers to, sorry, all our listeners and viewers to visit getcomfortablebeing.uncomfortable.com. If you want to learn more about Bob, you could visit bobmolle.com. And the book Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable is available exclusively on Amazon, and it's available worldwide. So I would request that everybody at least visit Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable and join the newsletter community, because there's a lot to learn. And Bob interviews high performers on a weekly basis. And it's a very, very anecdotal newsletter that you could learn a lot from. So again, thanks so much for your time, Bob. Really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And thanks you so much for tuning in to our first episode of Life Size Voices. Many more to come. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Pleasure.